Hey, what's
Hey.
up?
I'm nervous on
I'm
our
nervous
100
too.
what's it now?
Billionth episode?
145th episode.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm nervous and
Crazy.
I'm Liv.
And I'm Amy. And this
And this
is
is
Girls
Girls Gone
Gone
Spooky.
Spooky.
And this is our last episode of season
Wow.
4,
I can't
which
believe
is
it.
crazy.
It
Yeah,
flew by.
145 episodes under our belt,
Wow.
our communal belt.
Yes, our
Our
large belt.
singular, very large belt to accommodate my booty.
And mine.
Yeah,
We both.
a couple of big booty girls out
Yep.
here.
Yep. But they'll never
I
know
wonder
that.
if there's no, they don't need to know. I wonder if there's any correlation between having a fat ass being into spooky stuff. Let us know, everyone.
Yeah.
You got a fat ass? DM us.
Oh God. Probably.
Anyway, well, moving right
Witches
along.
have big booties.
Witches have dumpers. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
That's what it is.
Okay, well, we just recorded a little something to post during our hiatus, but I will reiterate what we shared. We're planning for season 5. Oh, exclamation point, exclamation
Yep.
point. And we want to hear your stories and theme requests. So holler at your girls, DM us on Insta or Facebook at Girls Gone Spooky. Email us at girlsgonespooky@gmail.com or check out the contact form on our website, girlsgonespooky.com. Pretty straightforward. If in doubt, just Google Girls Gone Spooky and we'll come up somewhere eventually.
Yep.
Although I do think our SEO needs some work, so I'm going to get on that during our break.
I don't even know what SEO is. So
search engine optimization.
Oh, of course.
Marketing robot.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously, you goon.
People could also comment on Spotify. Isn't that a thing now?
That's true. Yes, that is very true. You can totally comment on Spotify. Also, something that I've shared like individually, like one-off with people who've emailed us, but if you are like, I don't want to write this down, you don't have to. You can send us a voice note.
Yeah.
We will very happily transcribe your story. So if it's,
Yes.
I'm a big voice note girly, so totally understand preferring that to writing it out.
Yes.
So yeah, you could talk to text also. Really up to you. We are very down for a voice note though. Or a video. You could record yourself.
Yeah, that'd be
kind of fun. Cute, guys. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do it this summer.
Go
on vacation and then do it. This is on you. Ball's in your court.
Yeah.
You spooky little freaks.
Love it.
But yeah, okay. Final episode and third and final episode in our season finale series, Poltergeists. And I'm excited.
There's a lot of them out there.
So many.
I'm surprised.
And we've done other Poltergeist episodes, I know, but I feel like between the San Pedro one and some others that I've come across, but we figured we would kick us off with a bit of a refresher on like, what is a poltergeist? Because we really just like said San Pedro, dove, swan dive right in with zero context.
Yep.
So we're just gonna back it up for a minute and just remind you exactly what a poltergeist is. So the word is German and it means, adjective is a bit flex, but noisy, knocking, rumbling ghost. But there's a bit of conflict over the definition of a poltergeist versus your run-of-the-mill ghost or haunting. So I'm going to get into just like a few different ideas. They all overlap quite a bit, but I figured I'd just share some variety here. So parapsychologists will say that a ghost used to be a person. And a poltergeist is a manifestation of energy from a living person beyond their control. So it's the idea of like residual energy left behind, but that person's like spirit or soul is no longer connected to that energy. It takes on a life of its own, which I thought was really
Interesting.
interesting. Others say, along similar lines, that ghosts can exhibit poltergeist activity. So it's more of like an action than a thing. To create a poltergeist, a ghost can do that as well. Usually involves interacting with physical objects, sometimes people, living people. There's also the theory that it is uncontrolled telekinetic energy from a person, like I said. And yeah, this reiterates what I was saying. Don't think of a poltergeist as a separate entity, but a skill set of something paranormal, such that it is interacting with and affecting physical world. Now, what I didn't like about that is they said skill set of something paranormal, not a ghost specifically, because
Yeah.
that spells demon to me, which I
Yes.
don't love.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
that makes it scarier. So here
It
we are.
does. Yep.
Another way someone described it is that a ghost or a haunting is generally used as sort of an umbrella term for any phenomenon that is out of the ordinary and not quite explainable by rational means. This means shadow people, apparitions, lights going on and off, temperature variation, sounds, voices, object movement, disembodied touches, smells, etc. So pretty much any manifestation of a presence that our senses can detect, but for which we can discern no earthly or natural source or explanation. We'll call it a ghost, just generic. A poltergeist is a very specific sort of haunting in which the ghost or ghosts are able to manifest rather violently through loud knocks, hence the name, throwing objects and sometimes people around, opening and closing doors. In rare cases, some even speak, which we saw in the San Pedro poltergeist, usually through a host, though. So
Oh, like
poltergeists tend to
possession?
possess, yes, but only for the use of essentially like your vocal cords.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
Poltergeist activity usually revolves around some of the people or a person within a household. And interestingly enough, they seem to be attached to people who are experiencing strong hormonal changes, including children around puberty and a little more rarely women going through menopause, but also things like pregnancy, and other just like natural hormonal changes that happen. Why that's the case is unclear, but there are lots of theories. And I think the theories like are pretty obvious, like
Mm-hmm.
stronger emotions during those times and stronger
Mm-hmm.
kind of energy
Yeah.
around people and sort of in you with hormones coursing through your body. And then finally we have the everything is fae theory, which I feel like we haven't gone into a ton. But there are a lot of people who are into the paranormal and who research the paranormal who are like diehard on everything is fae. Like literally everything is some sort of fairy. Um yeah, so this theory starts sort of the same as the others, where they say a ghost used to be a living human being. Most rarely there's an intelligent sort of interactive personality. Think, and then this person said, think Hamlet's father, which I thought was funny. Um,
Wait,
Next would
quick
be,
side note, sorry.
yeah,
I played
no.
Hamlet's father in the sixth grade in our rendition of
What?
Hamlet as a
Stop. Do you
ghost.
remember the lines?
No, but I remember I
Damn it.
struggled really hard with the part where I had to like say ooh like a ghost really loud because my voice is so soft and
Mm-hmm.
they were like louder,
Louder, and you're like,
louder.
I can't. This is
I
as loud as it
can't.
goes.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway,
I'm in
sorry.
Max voice. That's what.
Continue.
Ooh. Hilarious. Wow. Hamlet's father, Ghost Amy. Um. Okay, so the most rare version of a ghost manifesting from being a dead human is yeah, intelligent, interactive. The next would be like what they call the shades raised at seances, voices, noises, feelings, messages from the beyond on a Ouija board, things like that. Then there are echoes of an old trauma, which would be like a memory acted out as footsteps, drafts, even vague figures moving. Poltergeist seems to be the projection of a living mind, usually a young person in the throes of adolescence or senescence, often hostile. And then they go on to say there are other beings sharing our spaces, and they describe them in two categories, seelie and unseelie, which I think we've actually talked about a little bit in one of our like lore, like folklore episodes. Um, we can always come back to that because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
And the what they call worldly court. There's so much like in here to unpack that we're not going to go into today, but note to self. The worldly court may interact with us daily. Fairies, elves, brownies, sprites, kobolds. These would be like playing pranks and jokes on us, hiding our keys, things like that. The unworldly court, which would be elementals, imps, banshee, bogies, will of the wisp, not whips, feel about us as we feel about the insects in our home. That they're either unaware of us or indifferent to us or even cruel towards us, because they're sort of so much bigger than we are,
Yeah.
not necessarily physically, but like metaphysically and in terms of like being conscious, I guess, and also
Yeah.
powerful in terms of magic and ability to manipulate the world around them. Um, and some believe that what we perceive as poltergeists, knocking, voices, lights, unseen assaults, may actually be unseelie fae warning us to change our behavior or else.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. Lots of different theories on exactly what it is. So if we go back to sort of like the baseline and we just are going to assume that the main difference between run-of-the-mill ghost or haunting and a poltergeist is the ability to leverage more power and energy, how much more powerful can they be, or how powerful can they become? And I thought someone had on Reddit had a really good kind of response to this. And this is from user Infernal Dictionary, which I love that username. And they say, honestly, it's all very fluid on how powerful a quote unquote ghost can get. Generally speaking, ghosts rely on real world energy to give them the ability to do physical things that we can see or feel. Since ghosts aren't corporeal, they can't just grab an object and throw it at you willy nilly. It takes extreme effort and often a significant amount of energy to do that. And this is why so many people who have this kind of experience have noted that their cell phone or camera or recorder batteries are drained of power pretty quickly, which I thought that was interesting that they would literally
Yeah.
be taking that energy in order to use it. I have never thought of that
No, me
before.
either. But that happens in like every story we
Every
tell.
story, which is
That's so,
fascinating. Like, of
yeah.
course, that's what they're doing. They're not just saying,
Mhm.
don't capture me on camera. They're like, I
Yeah.
need that.
I'll take that.
I'll take
Charge
that.
my
Thanks.
battery. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was like so brilliant. I don't know why that's never
Yeah.
crossed my mind before.
Same.
Um, so ghosts can't just fling things around all the time, and ultimately their actions are normally due to one of two reasons. One, they're trying to get a message across to the living, and two, they're not aware they're actually dead or disembodied, and their existence clashing with ours really confuses them. Now, the real problem, they say, comes with demons. Because, of course,
Of course. Yes.
they need no real world energy source to give them the ability to affect us and our surroundings. Because, unlike ghosts, demons can be both intangible and corporeal at will, which is fucking terrifying.
It's too much power.
Um, it's way too much power, meaning they can appear as an apparition, hallucination, or ghost and seem spiritual with no physical mass, but they can also transmute into corporeal substance, have solid mass, and physically knock the crap out of a person, destroy furniture, homes, without needing to drain your phone battery or your camera battery. Their power is what's called infernal and nearly unlimited when they're acting on commands or have orders to do specific things, which is interesting that it alludes to the hierarchy of demons that we've talked about a little bit in the past. Um, and if we're going to talk about like they don't need this, like they don't need the power from your battery, they also don't need human fear, but it is like candies to them, so they don't need it, but they really
Yeah.
like it and want it and enjoy it. So scaring humans tastes good to them and they want to keep doing it. They don't need to, but it's just for funsies.
Yeah.
um yeah. Though generally, they say, a demon tries to accomplish its task without making it obvious it's there, just because that's easier. Satan and his legions work hard to convince the world that they don't exist. However, there are records for millennia of demonic appearances, attacks, both injuries to people and property. So in any case where a haunting is getting violent and seems to be gaining in strength, it's either probably directly demonic or at least the being, or at the least being initiated by demonic influence. So that's another interesting angle that, like, so if we're going to assume a poltergeist, the actual source of the activity isn't demonic for whatever, just the hypothetical, that it's possible that that residual energy that now has sort of a mind of its own, that a demon could sort of set it onto a specific path that would get the demon's task done, which I just think is really interesting. So usually this would be signified by physical injuries, things like scratches, bruising, foul odors like sulfur or the smell of rotting meat, nausea, dizziness, and loss of consciousness. Yeah. Can also be caused by demonic influence or interference. And when it comes to poltergeists, most of the physical contact comes from years of pent-up hostility coming from spirits who originated as living people. So again, going back to just energy that has sort of gained some sort of like will. Often the people, though, in life who generate the poltergeist energy, according to this theory, were not very nice in life. So that kind of adds a layer to their spirit being kind of mean in death and maybe cruel or, violent in one way or another. But even still, most of the time, poltergeist activity is fueled by infernal power, according to this source, and in their experience and in the experience of many of their colleagues. When a malevolent spirit is wreaking havoc on someone, a demon is usually not far away and involved to some degree or another. So definitely adds a scarier tinge to the San Pedro poltergeist in particular, given, there is a lot of, because I think like what happened. Like, I really am not questioning that at this point. The interpretation of what was causing it, I think, is what is way more up for debate in my mind. So Jackie felt convinced, oh, it was the spirit of these two men, and one of them, was nice and one was not. Like, maybe not. Like, he tried to hang someone. Yeah. Like, that may not have been just some ghost, or the residual energy from a spirit. So anyway, figured I'd do like a quick breakdown of what is a poltergeist, how powerful can it be, and I thought Infernal Dictionary's little sum up. Clearly they've done a lot of research on this, so I figured I'd share that before we get into the juice.
First episode of this series.
I mean, agreed, and I didn't either, but I think because we've been like, oh, it's a noisy ghost, but I think I actually feel like I'm happy we're sharing it now after the fact, because at least for me, I was able to just take what Jackie, like what her sense of it was at face value and not be like picking it apart. Whereas like it's interesting to reflect on it now, not having known then.
The timing is good for this.
The timing is good. Okay, over to you. Kick us off.
Yes, here we go. So I have 2. I was gonna do 3, but one of these was so much more involved than I thought that we'll save the other one for later.
Ooh, okay, love.
But, yeah, this first one, excuse me, is just a little interesting thing that I found. Excuse me. That's the case of Stambovsky versus Ackley, and it became known as the Ghostbusters ruling. Which is so
I love that. That's so interesting.
And yeah, it has to do with a haunted house, as you may be able to guess. Yeah. So it was a 1991 case that went all the way up to the New York Supreme Court. And it dealt with the sale of a haunted house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think I see where this is going.
Yeah. But so yeah, throughout her ownership of the property at hand, which was located in Nyack, New York, Helen Ackley and her family had reported the existence of poltergeists in the house. And over the years, Ackley had reported these ghosts in her stories to both Reader's Digest and on 3 occasions to her local newspaper. And we'll get into the hauntings later, but that's an important detail.
Yeah.
So between 1989 and 1990, the Ackley family put the house up for sale. And the real estate broker, Ellis Realty, said that they shared that the house was haunted with all of the prospective buyers, including Jeffrey Stambovsky, who ended up putting an offer in on the house. So he signed his part of the contract, but according to Ackley, she refused to sign on her end until the broker confirmed for a second time that he knew that this house was haunted. And the realtor said that they called him right away, told him about the haunting, and he responded, "We'll have to call in the Ghostbusters." So he seemed to take it lightly.
Okay.
And the realtor reported this back to Ackley, and she signed. But just about a week later, Stambovsky claimed that he was never advised about the hauntings. And
Convenient.
I know. He'd like to have a meeting with the seller directly to talk about the ghosts. But after that meeting, Stambovsky filed for a rescission or cancellation of the contract of sale and also demanded damages for fraudulent misrepresentation by Ackley and Ellis Realty.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a slime.
I know.
What an ectoplasm slime.
So ectoplasmic of him to do this. But majority opinion in the court held that the fact that Ackley had reported the hauntings to both national and local publications meant that as a matter of law, the house is haunted. So, like, essentially that was a Supreme Court ruling that this house is legally haunted.
That's bonkers.
Yeah. So even with that legal haunted status, the realtor still had no responsibility to disclose that the place was haunted to a buyer. So even if they hadn't done that, which they still insist that they did, it still he wouldn't have grounds for his damages case. So that was thrown out quickly.
Okay, well, that's good.
But, yeah. But as far as the sale of the house, Stambovsky ended up losing his down payment. But since he didn't attend the closing, that meant he didn't have to go through with the full purchase.
Oh my God, but down payments are usually a lot of money.
Yeah, he was, I think it was like $32,000 or something, which isn't a lot today's standards of a down payment. But then, in 1989, So now about the hauntings in this house. So at the time that the Ackleys moved in, it was the 1960s. The house had been vacant. It was in disrepair. They said that some local kids, when they were moving in, had warned them the house was haunted, but there was no published account of anything prior to that.
Well, this is like some local kids, like, the place is haunted. Like, oh, the dilapidated house on the street. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
They would think that for sure. Yeah. So, but Helen, after living there for a while, claimed that there were at least 3 ghosts in the residence.
Oh.
She described 2 as being a married couple who lived in the 18th century, and the other as a Navy lieutenant in the American Revolution.
Whoa.
And the reason that she found this out is because she was contacted by a paranormal researcher and a medium who were able to make contact with the spirits at this place. And so she just kind of went along with it. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way to truly confirm if that's who they are, but
Right.
yeah, the couple
Her
they
best
said
guess.
were, yes, the best guess is the couple is Sir George and Lady Margaret, who were confirmed to have lived in that area at the time.
Oh, but they do
So,
have like a historical kind of
yes.
record that would match.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep. That's the thought. So,
Hmm.
who knows? But here's some rapid fire things that happened.
Okay, yes.
So, Helen claimed to have seen Sir George, quote, sitting in midair, watching me paint the ceiling in the living room, moving back and forth.
Ooh.
I was on an 8-foot
It's very
step
haunted
ladder.
mansion.
Yes, it is. Especially, yeah, just floating like
Yeah.
level with her on an 8-foot
Yeah.
ladder. It's crazy. She said, I asked if he approved of what we were doing to the house, if the colors were to his liking, and he smiled and nodded his head. Helen's daughter, Cynthia, when they moved in, she was still a child, and she would be woken up almost every day by something vigorously shaking her bed.
Jesus.
And one time when she was out of school for spring break, she said out loud before going to bed, I don't have school in the morning. I'd like to sleep in. And the next morning, she was not woken up by a shaking bed. So,
oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yep. They would frequently hear phantom footsteps slamming doors. They'd also all receive little trinkets like rings, some sugar tongs, coins, just like random stuff. But
Yeah.
they'd receive them and then they'd vanish. So it was
Oh,
like, here you go. Never
weird.
mind. Yeah.
Never mind. Take it back.
Stingy little ghosts. Yep. Another thing is that Helen claimed that her son once came eye to eye with the figure of that Revolutionary War lieutenant. So just like ran into a phantom, basically.
Yeah,
And then
yikes.
finally, Mark Kavanagh, he lived in the house while he was engaged to Cynthia, the daughter. So this is later on when they're older. And he said he would often hear conversation from vacant rooms. And his most intense experience was one night he was laying in bed. Cynthia had already fallen asleep. And he wrote, then I heard the bedroom door creak and the floorboards squeak. My back was to the edge of the bed. Suddenly, the edge of the bed, so behind him, by my midsection, depressed down, and I felt something lean against me.
No!
I was stone stiff. I was speechless and could hardly move. I was able to twist my neck around enough to see a womanly figure in a soft dress through the moonlight from the bay windows. I felt like she was looking straight at me. After about a minute, the presence got up and walked back out of the room. I finally relaxed enough to shake my wife out of sound sleep, acting like a toddler who just had a nightmare.
Oh my God. Okay, it's not as scary because it's just like a lady, but still.
Yes. Yeah, she was just like checking in. And
what's she doing?
Since then...
You sleeping?
Yeah.
You up?
Yeah, you up? It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said that later he thought about this and maybe these ghosts, because it was overall like nothing. Obviously, you're scared when you can't explain something, but it was a pretty peaceful coexistence with these poltergeists overall. And they had been there with this same family for so long that Kavanaugh was like, maybe they were just checking me out to see if I'm a good suitor for Cynthia, who had grown up in the house, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, that is cute.
Yeah, but since then, there have been no more like public reports of hauntings in the house, but it had some famous buyers recently, which was so weird. It was purchased once by Ingrid Michaelson, the musician.
What?
Then
That's so random.
And this is even more random. Next, purchased by Modest Yahoo, the musician.
What the hell?
And then by a filmmaker, Adam Brooks, who I don't know, but he's famous, apparently.
For some reason, I was convinced you were going to say Big Boy. I was like, it's gonna be Big Boy with his like weird exotic
Interesting.
bird collection.
Mm,
When I just think of like
theory.
like odd musicians, odd famous people, I think of Big Boy.
Yeah, he's an oddball.
Love him, but he's an
But
oddball.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But this case, just Ingrid and Matisyahu, whatever his real
So
name
funny.
is.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah, but that's that case. And then my second one is the one that has so much going on here.
Okay,
So
I'm ready.
it's the Pontefract Poltergeist.
Ooh, what a
And
name.
yeah, that's the name of the town, which I was like, wow, how cool.
Mm,
But
yeah.
um so this story, yeah, even as a firm believer in all of this stuff, there are some elements of this that sound like crazy even to me. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll just
Even to
I'll
me.
report it. I'll report it as it was shared on the
Okay.
official website.
I
So
accept.
Jean, Joe, Philip, and Diane Pritchard moved into number 30 East Drive in Pontefract, this is in England, in August 1966. So almost immediately, Philip and his grandmother were the first to witness a crazy phenomenon. So there was a fine layer of chalk-like dust not falling from the ceiling, but like from head height. So it was just like
Oh,
coming
out
out
of
of
nowhere.
nowhere. Yes.
Yeah.
And leaving a little film over everything.
Mm.
So Jean and Joe, the parents slash owners of the house, they were on vacation at the time. So in an effort to clean up before they returned, Mrs. Kelly, who was one of their siblings, I don't know, so Philip's aunt, um, was fetched by the grandma to also see what was happening. And the aunt went to the kitchen for some cleaning supplies, and she stepped on a pool of water, slipped, and this pool of water had mysteriously appeared.
Interesting.
So her efforts to mop up the water were thwarted because more and more pools just kept appearing in front of her. So, very weird beginning. And
Yeah.
this, was just the beginning of several years of inexplicable events, including green foam appearing from taps and in the toilet, even after they would shut the water off to like figure out what's happening.
What the hell? That
Yeah.
literally sounds like something out of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, green foam.
Yeah.
They need the Ghostbusters here.
They do. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
Green foam.
Yeah. Yes, things spilling a lot, lights being turned off and on, plants being pulled out of pots and then thrown, cupboards shaking violently, photographs being ripped or slashed with like a knife, seemingly, and then an endless amount of things levitating and being thrown.
Oh, don't like
Including,
that.
at one point, a solid oak sideboard, which would have been
Oh,
so heavy.
shit. Yeah.
So this thing is powerful.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. So the family also reported to the press, and for whatever reason, they started calling the spirit Mr. Nobody, but the family preferred to refer to him as Fred, which maybe was just to make it feel normal or make him feel less scary somehow. But they did want Fred to leave, of course, but nothing seemed to work. They had exorcisms, and during those exorcisms, they would have water seeping down from the ceiling. People would be slapped in the face, shoved down the stairs.
It's not funny.
Fred, no. This is the thing that I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. His hands would appear in the air and like seemingly conduct along with the songs that were being played that were trying to get rid of him, like Christian songs. But his hands would come and
Ooh.
like conduct along with the song.
Okay, that is not the first story of disembodied hands that I've seen associated with poltergeists. So I
Interesting.
actually
Okay.
wonder if that's like a bit of a thing. Like it sounds so
Mhm.
absurd, and that sounds like
Yeah.
mocking
Yes.
God,
Yes.
which
Hmm.
sounds demonic.
Demonic. Yes.
But there was one where her mother passed and she could see her mom's hands, like kind of
Mm.
blurry, but like she was not a kind woman, grab onto her daughter's head and like pull it back. But it was
Whoa.
like, it was my
Ooh.
mom's hands. Like she recognized her hands.
Recognized.
And I was like,
Interesting.
ugh, hate that. So I didn't include
Yeah.
it. And it was like a two-liner, but
Interesting.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. I think there may be more to that.
Hmm. That's, yeah, because I don't think he, at least in this story, is ever like a fully embodied
Mm-hmm.
spirit, but
Yeah.
maybe they have enough to do their
Power.
hands.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, interesting.
Very
Scary.
interesting. Yeah. Very scary.
Yeah. But he also, Fred, was said to have, so they were apparently having a conversation. Another aunt had come to visit, but she was a skeptic, and they were talking about everything that had been happening. And suddenly, a jug of milk was taken out of the fridge and poured over this lady's head. So it's like, how dare you not believe in me?
Yeah.
But
Jesus.
yeah, so the scariest, well, I don't know if this is the scariest, but it's pretty intense. Um, this was the first time that it had really touched someone, though.
Oh.
Um, that Philip and Diane, so the kids, and this was interesting, they're beginning to grow up, so they're probably hitting puberty at this time.
Hmm.
So that's like
Interesting.
what you were talking about. Um, and it seemed to center around Diane a lot, the
Mm.
daughter. And this one time, Diane, they were just sitting around together. Suddenly, her long hair was standing on end, and suddenly it was
Oh.
pulled, and she was being dragged, kicking and screaming up the stairs by her hair.
Up.
And that it also
That has
left,
conjuring energy. Like it's too
yes,
much.
yeah, it's that is gone too far because there were
Yeah,
also
that's really scary.
visible marks on her throat. So like something was touching
Oh
her.
my
But
God, poor Diane.
I know that's traumatizing. But yeah, I'm not totally clear on the timing of this part, but
Hmm.
the people who had reported seeing things in and also around the house, which is interesting,
Mm.
like people had seen this outside of the home in the neighborhood. Um, I don't know
Weird.
if we've encountered a story like that before,
No, not
but
really.
yeah, so he's like
That's
haunting the whole
interesting. The
area.
property. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, they had reported seeing things. Everybody agreed that this figure looked like it was wearing monastic robes.
Oh.
So, a young historian who had an interest in the Cluniac monks of
Mm.
Pontefract, he heard about this case and he became the first person to formally investigate it.
Mm.
And what he uncovered led him to speculate that this poltergeist might have been the ghost of a monk who had been hanged for rape in the
Oh.
time of Henry VIII.
Oh God. Oh, that just
Yeah,
got so much worse. Attacking the
yes,
young daughter. Ugh. I
I
hate
know.
it.
Yeah, yep, I hate
Ew.
that too. And that earned this poltergeist another nickname, the Black Monk. So
Mm.
sometimes, if you're ever wanting to look this up, the Black Monk is maybe the best search term. But
Shit. Also, why have we never
yeah,
heard of this one until now either? Like, there's so many
I
of
know.
these that I feel
Hmm.
like have just been like hidden away.
Yeah, agreed. I was surprised, like, in all of our episodes centered on UK or on whatever
Yeah,
geographic
totally.
area, this wouldn't have come
That
up.
this wouldn't come
But
up. Yeah.
yeah, the last part of this story that I'll try to summarize, because this was written by the person who either owns it now or owned it more recently. He wrote this on the website, and it's quite long, but it's kind of interesting the way he wrote it.
Yeah.
So the Pritchards eventually leave the home. It was purchased by Bill Bungay, who was an ad man and a filmmaker. He was also a skeptic, and so he wasn't really concerned about the hauntings in the house. And he actually bought it as kind of a joke, as advertising for his movie that he made called When the Lights Went Out, which was about the Pritchards and their haunting. So he's like, how fun would this be if I buy the house?
This guy's playing with fire here.
Yeah. Yep. So he bought it. He didn't live there, but he opened the house up to visitors, and you can actually even stay the night there if you're crazy.
Yeah. If you're crazy?
Yeah, if you're crazy.
Oof.
And Carol, the neighbor who oversees the house for him, let him know that since it had been opened up to people again, activity was really ramping up. She said there were bumps, I guess, on the walls that she shares with this place around 3 to 4 a.m., glowing blue balls of energy in the corridor. One night, the duvet on Carol's son's bed formed into the shape of a man. Yeah. The black shadow of a very tall entity came through one of the walls of her house. It was back. So
I hate that. The comforter in the shape of a man.
No.
The way I would burn my house down. I'd be like, well, arson charge, here I come.
Yep. I know.
What the
That is
fuck?
so scary.
That is so... I have so many questions too. Like, was the son in the room?
I imagine so, since
that makes me want to hurl.
What he saw.
Yep, that makes me want to throw up. That he would be alone in there and that would happen.
Yeah, trying to go to sleep. Like, what a nightmare.
Poor baby. I'm good. Pass. Hard pass.
I say poor baby. I don't know how old he is, but...
Yeah, but still, he's a poor baby if that happened. Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. There's, on this website also, which I'll share with you, there are so many pictures of things, and I was looking at them and just like feeling
getting freaked out.
God, yeah. There's one in particular.
Send it to me.
That you can see this black shadow that she was talking about.
Oh, that gave me a chill, Amy.
So scary.
That really gave me a chill. Fuck. Okay, send it to me. I want to see it. I want to scare myself.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But his story goes on. He finally starts experiencing things himself. Let me see. Yeah, the kettle switching on and superheating of its own volition. Things constantly
dangerous.
Yeah. Things constantly going missing, and especially keys. It seems like this poltergeist was really focused on keys. And back in the day, actually, one of the Pritchard's stories was that they had lost their keys and they were cleaning around the fireplace one day, like near the chimney, and suddenly the keys fell through the chimney. So it was like,
what the hell? How could that have happened?
Yep.
That's so weird.
Yes. But then let me skip ahead because he added an addendum to this. On February 14th, 2016, and maybe I'll just read this part.
Yeah.
So, on February 14th, 2016, I went on one of my occasional visits to the house. I was alone washing some items in the kitchen sink when I felt the instinct to turn. I looked over my right shoulder, only to see a small object materialize above the dining room table before being projected ballistically at my head. I could have sworn that it was going to hit me right between the eyes and would have hurt had it done so, but it missed me by a whisker and ricocheted off the kitchen window. I
See
looked
by a
down.
whisker. I'm just imagining
Yeah,
this in an
yeah.
accent. I
This
love
is
it.
very British. It's
Yeah.
all written. Yeah. Let's see. I could have sworn. Okay, he found that it was a small wooden domino. It was sitting on the kitchen floor after being
Weird.
thrown at him. Yeah. After a few regrettable expletives, I felt the need to thank it for demonstrating for me its ability to teleport. I don't know why you would thank it for that, but
Yeah.
um,
I mean, but I
after
guess if
doing
he's like a
that,
filmmaker and like is obsessed with the
yeah,
case, I guess.
yeah, yeah, or being skeptical up to this point, even after
Similar, yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and similar to what Jackie said of like I recognize like I'm one of so few people who've experienced something like this and I'm like
That's
grateful to
true.
have experienced it to some
Yeah,
extent.
true. Yeah, maybe he's similar. But
Yeah.
yeah, from then on, he says, I was bombarded by small objects, all of which missed me by a hair. A marble was projected through the ceiling. I don't know what that means.
Jesus.
With such force that it took varnish off the piano.
Oh.
It missed my right ear by the smallest of margins. 2 screws were thrown again through the ceiling,
Oh.
missing my ears by millimeters. A red plastic ball materialized before my eyes and was thrown directly at my head again. I was talking to Carol, the neighbor, at the time. The ball materialized well behind her over her right shoulder. Yeah.
Weird. Oh, it's like involving the neighbors too. That's so
Mm-hmm.
weird.
Yeah, very bizarre. He says my hat was removed off the handle of my case and thrown onto the sofa. The room was definitely empty at the time. And finally, Carol, her whole group, and I were all sat in the front room together having a cuppa and laughing
Papa.
about the incidents when we all heard a pop and the sound of something light, probably plastic, fall onto the kitchen floor. Carol went to see what the noise was, only to discover her granddaughter, who had just entered the front door, biting into a polystyrene orange. Or polystyrene. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah. I don't either.
Carol says, "Don't bite that, sweetheart. It's not a real orange. Where did you get it anyhow?"
Also,
And
you
she
don't
said,
like bite into an unpeeled orange, which I'm sure is what that thing looks
"Yes.
like.
Yes, but she's a little girl." And she
Oh, okay.
said, "A man in black gave it to me. So
Ew!
maybe
Oh,
maybe he
God.
told her to do it or something. Who knows?"
Yeah.
But this orange had been lifted from the decorative faux fruit bowl that he had, and it was given to her. So
Interesting.
interesting. Yep. And
Creepy as
all in
hell.
all, it was an incredible afternoon because remember, this was all in one day.
Oh my
So
God. Oh, yeah. He
yeah,
was like, I went back on the 15th or whatever it was.
on Valentine's Day.
Oh, the
So
14th. Okay.
then he was saying why it was suddenly targeting me, I don't know. But then he says, hey, it might even have been a twisted act of love. It was Valentine's Day after all.
I
And
don't think so, buddy.
especially because the stuff that was being thrown at him, it kept missing him. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what he was thinking, like,
Yeah.
at
You were
least
just
it wasn't
teasing.
hitting me. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
just
that's
messing
true.
around.
I'm just imagining it being like, screw, marble, screw, and then just like a red
Yeah.
bouncy ball, like, ah!
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So that's Pontefract Poltergeist / Black Monk / Fred.
Wild.
Yeah.
I need to see those photos, so send
Crazy.
them to me.
Okay, yeah. Should I do it right now?
Yeah, send it
Then
to
you
me.
can get a live reaction.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Um, and I have a couple like quick little threads that I wanted to share, and then one more like pretty short poltergeist story, which actually brings us into an office space because usually poltergeists are like exclusively in homes. But this one was not. It haunted an office building. So I will get into that at the end. I'm
Okay.
waiting for this link.
I put it in the chat of the Riverside.
Oh, ooh,
Fancy.
here we go. Very fancy. Okay.
And
Oh, hate
scroll.
that. Hate that. On the stairs.
Yeah, the purpley looking ones. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
I hate that one
Oh,
so
I don't
much.
like that. I really don't like that. Oh my God, there's so much stuff.
Hmm.
The Bible being moved.
Yeah. Oh, just wait.
The thing in the doorway. What is in the
Yeah,
doorway?
I don't know. I hate it.
Oh my God, and that like shadow. What is that shadow?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
oh my God. Okay, we have to post this link. This is like
Yeah.
bonkers.
Yeah. And
Okay, I'm putting this in my notes.
these are visitor images. So these are all from people who either stayed
Oh
there or came
shit.
in. They also have photos like posted from the official owners and whatever that
Oh
you could look
wow.
at.
Holy
Yeah,
crap.
this website is great. There's a lot of stuff on here.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that in more detail.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so a couple quick little threads. This first one is from Sakura Chan 14. Um, so they say, I've never experienced a poltergeist firsthand, but a friend who is very skeptical about everything paranormal has. She and her mother moved house a lot when she was younger, and in one of those houses there was a very heavy energy. And one day while she was alone at the home, things started falling off the walls and tables, the lights were flickering on and off, doors slamming. So she left her house and called another friend to calm down. I can't know for real if this story is real or not because I didn't live it, but this friend is incredibly skeptical. So her telling me this shocked me, which is why I feel like reducing such an event to it's not real or ghosts don't exist is a bit insensitive towards someone who may have experienced it. Um, and they go on to say like something as physical of this I can't say as physical as this it's hard for me to say like oh it's just your imagination because that's so much happening
Yeah.
physically. um and and they're basically saying like has anyone else experienced something like this, and so they're just two really quick ones. Maki JP says, I know of a poltergeist. There was a farmhouse in a rural area close to where a friend of mine grew up, and the family in the house were plagued by poltergeist, allegedly, activity. And this was several decades ago. So far, only the family had seen the activity until one day a worker from the electric company came to read their electricity meter. And while he was alone in the kitchen, a very large, heavy dresser moved several feet on its own. He told people what he'd seen, and the family was finally believed. So, like, no one believed them until there was a second source.
Yeah.
It was actually, and they go on to say, I can post some article links to some cases here in Ireland, and there are some well known ones there, I guess. So we can add that to our list.
Yeah.
And then another one from a deleted user said, I lived with one from the ages of 2 to 19, and my parents did as well. We should have just sold the bloody house, threw my brother across the room into his gym equipment, banged walls, threw stuff, made the upstairs smell like shit so no one could go upstairs. Things disappeared, walls had scratches in them, there were tapping noises at night, floating heads, clowns walking through doors.
Ew. What?
I would die of fear. The list goes on. It was terrifying as a kid. The house has been a rental for many years now, and no one has ever lived there longer than 6 months.
Wow.
So,
That could be
yikes.
legally haunted.
Yeah, I think perhaps it is.
Yes.
So yeah, so there is that one. And then this one has a bit of a trigger warning. So I'll just lead with that for
Okay.
self-harm in the most extreme, an attempt at that. I don't know why I feel so like hesitant to say suicide, but suicide is the trigger warning here. And this is posted by Big Toe Suckers.
There's a little bit of levity there.
Yeah, a little levity for you. And I just thought this one was so interesting because of actually the attempted suicide component, which is a weird thing to say, but you'll see what I mean. The title is Haunted by My Own Poltergeist. And so they say, since a couple of years ago, I've been experiencing some paranormal activity in my home. Things like keys and jewelry going missing and moving into new places where it shouldn't be, noises and whispers that only myself and my cats seem to notice. I've heard running and crying upstairs when I'm home alone, and have had my door closed right in front of me without touching it and with no draft. I've seen a specific set of keys bouncing up and down on the hook that I hang them on. Now, hence the trigger warning, this all started after I had attempted to take my own life. I have always felt as if I really did die that day, and I am worried that part of me did. The things that have happened have been linked directly to my childhood. I've found missing phone chargers and jewelry in a secret hiding spot that I used when I was little. I've also been starting to find food under my pillow, and I used to hide food there when I was little because I wasn't allowed to eat at night. A sweater that I used to borrow from my dad when I was younger has also repeatedly gone missing. It doesn't really feel dangerous, but I do feel an ominous darkness in the house, especially in my old bedroom where the attempt happened. My cats refuse to go into that room now and often seem to hide and hiss at nothing. I'm frightened that this ghost is either me or has a very strong dislike for me, but I do think that it is attached to the house and not to me personally. Does anyone have any tips on how to make it go away? I've tried to just ignore it and it doesn't work. I've even tried to tell it that it needs to leave and it can't live in my house anymore, and things just keep happening. The reason why I think this is so interesting is the idea that a poltergeist could be energy detached from a living person,
Yep.
given will and a mind of its own, essentially. And because something like self-harm or suicide has such like big, dark, heavy energy to it,
Yep.
it kind of makes sense that, like, not that part of them died that day exactly, but a piece broke off, kind of like an energetic piece broke off and is literally haunting them. Like,
yes. Yep.
does that seems feasible to me based on basically
Yeah.
what everyone agrees, or most people agree, is kind of like the definition of a poltergeist. I don't know.
Yep. Based on the definition you gave, I think it makes total sense.
Yeah. I just thought it was like
really
so awful. I'm very happy they're alive. And
yes,
like just a wild situation that I would never even think could be possible, but kind of makes sense in that way.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah. So that leads us to our last one, which is the Rosenheim poltergeist. So Astonishing Legends just did a good job of kind of rolling this up. So I am going to just read from here. So they open with, unlike a lot of popular poltergeist hauntings you may be aware of, the Rosenheim poltergeist activity didn't occur in a private home, but it lurked in the offices of German lawyer Sigmund Adam. So it first began in the fall of 1967 when Sigmund Adam's law office in Rosenheim, southern Bavaria, began receiving strange phone calls. Whenever someone would pick up, there'd be no answer from the caller, and oftentimes all four of the office's phones would ring, and the phone lines were usually busy or overcrowded. Frustrated, Sigmund reached out to the local phone company for repairs, and surprisingly, the phone company could not find the reason behind the calls, so they had no real record of those incoming calls. Things then began to escalate when Sigmund's office was charged for local calls made to the quote-unquote talking clock. The talking clock was a service that locals could call to get the exact time. The number was 0119. And the telephone company charged Sigmund for 6 calls per minute to the talking clock, which would be physically impossible given the time needed to dial the number, the other end to pick up, which is what initiates the charge. Right. The telephone company had no reasoning for this impossibility either. Then, in October, the lights in the office began acting up. They would rotate in their sockets. So not just like, oh, flickering on and off. No, they would rotate in their sockets. Fixtures would swing. And of course, the lights would turn on and off seemingly at random. Similarly to how he handled the phone situation, he called the electric company to come out to the office to investigate. The electrician said there was no identifiable cause for why this would be happening, but decided to install voltage meters to see if there were any power surges in the office. Shockingly, pun intended, surges were recorded that were rated powerful enough to blow the fuses, but the fuses were never blown. So, some weird burst of energy that they couldn't identify the source. Then, yes, another then, their photocopier began to leak. Frustrated beyond belief and still blaming the electric company, Sigmund decided to hire out a private generator in hopes of stopping the office. However, the phenomena continued. Stopping the office activity, I think, was the word missing there. After many calls, the strangeness of Sigmund's law office began to travel through the electric company, and 2 physicists became interested. They offered to come out to the office for a personal investigation, and when completed, they were completely stumped and came to the conclusion that it was beyond their experience or understanding. Finally, the notoriety of Sigmund's office reached paranormal circles, and Hans Bender of Freiburg's Institute of Parapsychological Research offered Sigmund some help if he was interested. Sigmund agreed and invited Hans over to investigate. After several interviews with employees, Hans realized that the phenomenon only began and ended at certain times of the day, and these times seemed to be on the same schedule as Anne-Marie Scabarrel, one of the youngest office employees at just 19. So not pubescent, but not that far off either. Based on this, Hans connected the activity to Anne-Marie and suggested that due to repressed anger and dislike of her work and employer, she may have been in emotional turmoil. Yeah, a little bit.
My office would be so haunted.
Yeah. Retweet. So in the winter of 1967 to 1968, the phenomenon continued to grow. Items began moving at will. Drawers would open on their own. Why did I say it like that? Drawers.
I didn't even notice.
Okay, well, I did. Damn.
Drawers.
That was wild. Drawers would open. And huge, heavy pieces of furniture would move without damaging the linoleum flooring on which they rested. So it was almost like they were being lifted and moved. Yeah. Hans noted that in his research, poltergeist activity usually emanated from young people. Usually unknowingly, young people, especially teenagers, are capable of creating disruptive psychic energy that can affect the world around them. Unclear if she was offended by Hans' inquiries, tired of the pneumonia, or if she really did hate her job. Anne-Marie quit. I don't know where the pneumonia part came in, but I guess she got sick. And when she quit, the phenomenon ceased entirely. Some rumors do suggest she was placed on paid leave, and when the activity ceased, she was fired. So they were like, let's test it out. You're out of here.
Yeah, you're the problem.
Yeah, there are rumors that the electrical activity continued throughout Anne-Marie's experience, even when she had left her employer. One suggests that a boyfriend broke up with her at a bowling alley after a freak electrical accident. However, in 1969, she was married and the activity around her allegedly ceased. So it sounds like maybe the activity followed her outside of this office building for some amount of time. Of course, many believed the entire thing was a construction to either gain attention or business, although it's unclear how many people would actually want to hire a lawyer with the haunted office, or maybe it was just a ruse by Hans for he and the institution he represented to be more credible. But either way, it's wild. Even if it was, a ruse, that the office, the people behind the movements, the electric company, the phone company, and more could all keep the secret. So it seems similar to the Jackie thing. Why would they lie? Why would they corroborate the story, essentially?
Yeah.
So that is the Rosenheim poltergeist. And I feel like that must be one of the older ones. But then again, if Hans and this institution institute existed, then, and he clearly had information about other poltergeists. So research about poltergeists must go back pretty far.
Yeah.
Which is
That's
interesting. Yeah. That's weird.
I wonder.
That's really weird.
Yeah. During World War II, they do a lot of paranormal research over in Germany? Maybe
yeah, that's true. With like astral projection and things like that too.
Yeah.
And I think during the Cold War as
Ghosts.
well, but obviously
Yeah.
World War II predates that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that concludes our end of series and end of season episode. You spookies. Wow. So have a fabulous summer, a spooky summer-ween, and we will be back right in time for spooky season to kick off season 5.
Yay! Can't wait.
Can't wait. And until then, stay spooky.
Stay spooky. Bye.
Bye.